Welcome to the Systems Simplified Podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Clevitt here, the host of the Systems Simplified Podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Kalen Marie Cotto. Hi, Kalen.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, you're very welcome. So, Kalen, let me read your bio so our listeners will know what the conversation is going to be about, and we'll dive right in.
Okay.
All right. So, Kalen, you are a fractional CMO, which is Chief Marketing Officer. You're the author of The Revenue Runway and founder of KMC Digital, where you help small businesses and startups drive sales and growth. And you have 20 plus years of experience, including coordinating media in combat zone. That's wow. Okay, coordinating media in combat zone. I'm going to ask you about that. And you craft no-fluff strategies that deliver results proven by clients achieving double industry standard conversion rates and thousands of sales calls. That is incredible. So, first of all, welcome to the show. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, tell us about coordinating media in combat zones. What is that all about?
Well, when I first graduated college, I went into the Army Reserve. And so when you are freshly out, basically I was in ROTC program in Tennessee. My bachelor's degree that I was there to get was journalism. And they said, hey, would you want to join the ROTC program? I actually did a news story on the ROTC program that year because they won some awards. So I was there interviewing them about the awards, and then they asked me if I wanted to be in ROTC with them, which I had not considered before. And they were just such a great group of people, and I really loved all the things that they were telling me about service, and most of our class was prior service, and so they were explaining to me how it worked. Anyway, fast forward, the recruiter said, if you could go in, what would you want to do? And I said, anything to do with journalism or computer sciences. And he said, actually, there's this public affairs unit in Nashville. We can get you in there. And they let me go and serve early on. Like I hadn't even gone to my basic training things or anything like that. They said, okay, just here's your uniform, show up at this place and you can start working with them right away. And I was like, oh no, like I didn't know anything about it. So I started that way, and then got my officer commission, went to school for public affairs and also Signal Corps. So in the Army, I had to do both computers and public affairs because of the way they do the training. You can't just go in as one. You have to have a base first. And so public affairs for the Army is like an add-on. So after I finished all my schooling, I ended up moving to California, joined a reserve unit in Los Angeles. We went to Iraq in 2007 to 2008. So when I was there, we ended up I moved all over the country depending on what they had me doing. So in the reserve side, you can be deployed with active duty. We were with first a reserve unit, a sustainment command. They kind of bring all the food and water and supplies to everybody. After about 2 months of that, they sent me down to Baghdad to 3rd Infantry Division, and they had me embedded with a unit down there. And that's how I ended up bringing media everywhere. We had people from newspapers, broadcast. Lara Logan was CBS News reporter at the time. She was one of our embeds. Oliver North was one of our embeds for like 3 weeks. He was doing a special. So if anybody followed like military news at that time, they would probably know those names. We even had, it wasn't in my area, but Anderson Cooper flew in and he embedded with other units not mine, but it was fun because we got to work with people who are high level news people. and kind of learn from them and get to talk to them when they weren't on the job. They would sit and have lunch with us and talk to us about what they do. So I still got to kind of have my foot in the journalism space without being a journalist. So,
Wow. So what's the biggest lesson that you learned from that?
oh gosh, not everything you see on TV is the full story. And the first report is typically the worst report. They try to get as much information out as fast as they can, and it's typically not totally the whole story. And so I learned a lot from those journalists and how the news is actually planned out. And so for business owners, it's kind of a good thing to know when you're pitching stories to try to get your business out there. The news reporters themselves don't often, sometimes they do locally pick their own stories, because I did work in a newsroom for a time before my deployment. But a lot of times, if the local beat reporter can't find a story for their niche that they report on, the actual, like, the higher up bosses will say, like, this is what we're going to be covering this week.
That's
And
interesting. So that says a lot also about the media and the truth and all of that. But in terms of how do you apply it to business?
yeah,
In terms of like you, so when you're doing a public relation, I guess news, or you go into the news and you want to get some media coverage for the business, what is your advice?
it depends on the story. So I think one, I could tell you a recent one, but they were in a unique case. So this is what we did with a client of mine out of Rhode Island. Their name is Desitel Browning Law. I do not think she'll have a problem with me sharing this at all. I've been working with her for the past 5 years. If anybody wanted to look them up, desitelbrowning.com is their website. And then all their social medias, what happened was they were working with fishermen in regards to the offshore wind industry. So they do a lot of work with land use and permitting, a law firm, very boutique law firm. It's Marissa and her partner, and then they'll have paralegals that help them as well. But they they work with mainly municipalities or large groups that are trying to uh, navigate whatever the law is to get the project done that they want to get done. In this case, the fishermen hired them to go against the wind energy projects because the science showed it was going to damage the ecosystem to the point that, the seafood industry would really be decimated and all of these guys would be laid off. And the more that I learned about it, the worse it looked as far as, how it affects the ecosystem. And the trade-off, just anyway, I could go on and on about offshore wind now, but but they were realizing, hey, we need to get the word out about this case and what we're doing and the issue. And it just so happened that the president had said that he was going to halt offshore wind. And they had just filed a suit. And I basically, we jumped in on a very narrow news hole where they were already talking about it on several different channels. And so we pulled in a local expert, Megan Lapp, who's all over the world talking about this. And then my attorney and her partner, like, they all did statements. So they called me on a Friday. We had a press conference done on Tuesday. So we worked over the weekend. We developed talking points. We emailed out a press release to all the local media, and it's a little bit of a different one when you're doing a press conference. But we invited them to come to the press conference Tuesday morning. But also, what I knew is that they're not going to understand who these people are, why they're doing a press conference, right? Because they're small potatoes. So I called a friend and hired them to videotape the entire thing. So that raw video, unedited, we dropped into a Google Drive. We took the press release, the talking points, and static images that we had of the clients with logos and the whole 9 yards, bios of each person. We made a media kit. We sent that as a follow-up to anyone who did not, because what we didn't know is the governor was going to have his own press conference that same day. We had no idea. We just thought Tuesday is the best day to do a news conference based on what I know. And we planned it.
Well,
And
apparently he had also advisors that they knew that as well. So he had
correct.
yeah.
So, but it worked out in our favor because as he was live on all the news networks, but a couple of the major news networks sent a crew down there anyway. And then my team that was doing all the video for me, that video we sent out, I said, look, you probably are at the governor's press conference today, but just so you know, there was another one on behalf of the fishermen down at the docks that you probably didn't go to. because we get that you're limited on staff. So here's the media kit. If you want to cover it, Marissa's available. You can give her a call or contact me and I'll coordinate an interview with her. We had coverage on every single major news network, and they used the footage that we created and took the clips that they wanted to take out of it, which was interesting to see how each channel edited that footage. But that was probably the most perfect best case scenario for a press conference I've done recently. And not only did they get coverage on every network that week, but they got scheduled for follow-ups after follow-up after follow-up. And then Megan, they even got invited to DC to speak with the staff for the president that was working on the wind energy. And that opened up other doors for them as a business and a law firm.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. Well done.
It was fun. I love doing stuff like that.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, so tell me about your book. So The Revenue Runway, what it is about.
This is more, I really wanted to take business ownership and simplify it. It's very similar, I think, to kind of what you do with clients, help them processes, systems. A lot of times people, when they get started, especially, they start trying out all these different tactics because they'll get an ad in their Facebook feed. This is my AI. It's going to sell for you, and it's going to, do all your content in an hour for the next 12 months and just
At the
upload
same
one
time,
video.
also cook you lunch and do your laundry. Yes.
And then you pay for it, you download it, and you're like, this thing stinks. Like it's not doing anything, they said. So what I've realized after 15 years of working with clients on my own is that there are certain components that are unchanging. Everyone needs an offer that people want to buy. Everyone needs to know who they're selling to, who they're talking to. Everybody needs to know how to sell to those people once they do get on the phone. And so I think those three core things I focus on, but the fuller blueprint is really mindset. The whole beginning of the book is mindset. Are you ready for this? Do you have a support system? If you don't, it's okay. And then the second piece is those three things you really have to have in place. And
So
then
the three things, let's repeat them. First of all, I agree with you about the mindset. The mindset is very important, and that's one of the things that we do as well to begin any engagement is the mindset, because you have to know, you have to have that mindset in order to document, in order to systematize. So I agree with you on that 100%. But what are the three things that you cover?
the main three that we feel like are non-negotiables are your offer, an offer that people want that's easy for them to understand and go, yes, I need that, which ties to messaging a bit. Your ideal client avatar, who are you talking to? I know avatar, I hate that word, but just who do you sell to? That one, just starting with one person, one offer, one person, talk to them, tell them what you are selling. And then the third thing is just your core sales message. Like, what is it? How are you approaching that call? Are you going to be shoving your stuff down their throat, or you're just gonna, for me, it's more of a conversation. Are we a good fit to work together? And if we're not, that's totally cool. We can be friends, we can refer people to each other, whatever. But I think that those three are sort of the things that trip people up, because I've gotten
Absolutely.
clients sent, right? So we've gotten their offer down, we've gotten their ideal client down, we have sales funnel running, there's ads going, they're starting to get phone calls to their office and booked calendars. Then they get on the phone, they don't follow up in time. Once they get on the phone call, they didn't train their staff on how to have a conversation about what they offer. So people are like, I don't need to make an appointment, never mind, like this isn't a fit for me. And which it was a fit for them, but the person that called them didn't know how to explain it, and that was my very first mistake in helping people with sales funnels, is not starting with getting their message down first before we turn on the traffic, because once you turn the traffic on, you're getting inundated. And so it's always a learning curve. It just, even if you do that and you get inundated and you kind of screw it up, you can always start over. Like people get very scared about doing anything wrong, and I think it's more of a learning process. And yeah, so those are the three that we focus.
I totally agree. And I think, if you look at it, you can't have one without the other. They all rely on one another. You need to know what you're selling. You need to know who you're selling it to, and you need to know how to sell it, because if you only have two and then you don't have the third, you're not going to be successful, and it's not going to work. So I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with you. All right. Well, if you definitely show that you have a lot of experience and definitely interesting stories as well, and caring and knowing how to execute. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
The main website now, we're actually in the middle of building out like a really expansive portal that has a bunch of downloadables. They can save the link, the revenuerunway.com. It is not totally live yet, but there will be a landing page there. And then my normal website for client work, where we're actually the done for you services, is kmc.digital. If they want to, there's a contact form there.
Good. So kmc.digital and definitely the revenue runway. And if they want to buy the book, where can they buy it?
It'll be on the revenuerunway.com. And I think
Okay,
it goes
great.
live in, oh gosh, we wanted to launch it this month, but it's probably going to be live in December. So I'll
That's
keep you
fine because this
posted.
is first of all, it's an evergreen podcast. So if somebody's listening to us right now, they go, oh yeah, well, it's already live. And by the time this podcast comes out, it's going to be live. So go there. It's therevenuerunway.com.
Mhm. Yep.
And then you can get the book and also see all the what we discussed, I mean, the different principles and anything that you want to know about it.
Mhm.
And Kalen, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast and sharing all your knowledge. And I definitely encourage our listeners to go to your website and contact you and learn more.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Systems Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.